Okay. Welcome. So I'm gonna start talk about Star Wars. And well, I was gonna say, let's look at how they've done. Also, Disney fucking sucks. They used to be pretty good. I even when I knew that Disney had bought Star Wars, thought it would look was very skeptical, but not because they made bad movies, but because of what movies they actually made before. So before they used to be known for children's movies, and while that wasn't like that far away from Star Wars, I also didn't don't think that Star Wars movies would fit in as little Disney movies. Well, you do have Pirates of the Caribbean, but I also don't think like I don't think they would ever dare to like go into the darker things in Star Wars. I don't think they would have explored something like Sith and other things. I do think it was a bad thing from the start, but oh my, has it been worse than what anyone could have expected. Spoiler alert, I suppose if you didn't expect if you've lived under a rock or something. But if is it written in the bottom, at the December 21st, 2012, Disney bought Star Wars. Let's look at how it started first. It didn't start off that bad, to be honest. Like Rebels, while there are things in Rebels that I don't agree with, Rebels, I haven't seen all of it. From what I've seen and what I've heard, Rebels isn't that bad, right? And there are some scenes that I've seen from Rebels that are actually really good. Like again, the Darth Vader scene when J- when they fight, quote unquote fight Darth Vader. Like if that didn't kill him, then what can? Like not us. Where they did, and also in Rogue One, where they also showed off how threatening of or how big of a threat Darth Vader is, right? When he just mowed through that hallway, and Rogue One, which is generally liked, I like it quite a lot, and it has some really good looking scenes. And Andor, which was inspired by it, is also fairly liked and was seen as very good, right? Now there are ways to criticize all of this, like the world between worlds. I'm going to mention that later. And while yes, I know Mando came after Lost Jedi, as it said, it doesn't really matter. While the Lost Jedi was bad, oh, it's gotten way worse. It's gotten worse after that. Like it gets worse. It gets predominantly just worse. And as you can see, the Last Jedi was also generally liked both by audience and by the reviewers. Now it's gotten worse rep after that, but that's because of the movies afterwards. Like Ray, like they didn't fix some of the bad parts of the Force Awakens. I do think the Force Awakens could have been a good trilogy just based on what they introduced like for the Force Awakens, but I digress. Anyway, it didn't start that bad, right? And there were a lot of theories and hype around Snoke as well. People were very interesting. There were a lot of theories around it, right? And it was also a very big box office, as you can see. It didn't start off bad, right? How did it go? How is it now? Well, as you can see by the reviews, not great. So the ones that are seen as okay or good by Star Wars fans are reviewed by the audience as 60%. Now, Kenobi was not seen as good, but Ahsoka, I've not heard many like I've heard some criticizing, but generally I haven't heard many criticizing. It's, but then you have like and like you have but again and if you don't know how Rotten Tomatoes work, yes, I understand Rotten Tomatoes is not a good source for them. Rotten Tomatoes, essentially, if it's a 5 or above, it's counted as a recommend, and that would be in like how many recommends it is the percentage, right? So 60, 64 had above a 5 out of 10. 5 out of 10 is not something I would recommend, even though it's like okay or good, or okay, right? That is a mid-series. The reason is generally they used to be kind of like they aren't bad, but they also aren't generally aren't interesting. So I would probably, if something is like 5, 4, or maybe a 6, I probably wouldn't recommend it. There are some but then sometimes if it's way below that, it's like 3 out of 10, I might recommend it because it's so bad it's good again, right? It's entertainment and it's stupidity. But then you have like Acolyte, Tales of the Jedi, Book of Boba Fett, like all below 50%, like with Acolyte 90, under 20%, right? And some like clearly bad storytelling and writing, like you see the power of this scene, which is terrible. All of Acolyte is terrible. The 100 years or these images will pop up again, but 100 years earlier, I saw a Jedi that were twins that conceived with the Force. Anakin isn't that big of a deal, right? And like somehow Palpatine returned. Great writing. Great writing. Let's look at some movies that are around above Acolyte that I would actually recommend more. The Room and Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, right? Yes, this isn't good like numbers, but these are around the same level of numbers that like Tales of the Jedi and the Book of Boba Fett are, and I would actually recommend these more because they go into the territory where they like so bad they're good. Like Attack of the Killer Tomatoes is a really stupid movies, which is why they get terrible critics reviews, but they're still better than Acolyte, and the Acolyte is not so bad it's good, it's just bad, right? And I actually recommend Attack of the Killer Tomatoes if they're like let's just look at this just get like the reason why they're so badly or like has so bad scores and like the movie that I'm comparing it to these again.
Great nation, almost
This is an
everyone has
old
been
movie
affected in one
also.
way or
Like
another.
if you didn't see it, this is like 80s or something like that. I don't remember. I can look it up. I can look it up. Let's just go. Attack of the Kill. Yeah, 78, right? So 1978 is. Right? Why is it? So like 1978 is when this movie came out. Probably should
Across
have
this
used a
great
different.
nation, almost everyone has been affected in one way or another by this terrible tomato onslaught. Mrs. Williams, I understand your husband
This
is
is the
missing.
movie better
Yes,
recommended
he's
than
dead.
Acolyte.
Will you miss him? Will you marry again? What if he's laying in a ditch somewhere, with both his legs broken, calling your name? You will have to find another man, you know. You're no spring chicken.
Lives are shattered. The nation is in chaos. Death and destruction sweeps the country. Foursquare Productions presents perhaps the funniest film ever made.
Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. You've never seen a film like it.
Look at
This
the tomatoes.
is the incredible story of the world's ultimate disaster. Vicious man-eating tomatoes grow to monstrous proportions. Faced with this unprecedented menace, the president calls upon Mason Dixon, special agent. Aided by his trusty sidekick, Dixon begins to unravel the terrifying mystery.
This is a better recommended movie
Dixon is getting close.
than Star Wars, the best-selling franchise, or one of the best-selling movie franchises of all time.
Who could it
if not
be?
the best.
The girl reporter? The ad executive?
The Golden
the
Goose.
Press secretary? Or does it go higher? Join Mason Dixon in a race against time as he battles to save the world from the threat of nature's perfect eating machine, the Killer Tomato.
Ain't no time to make a fuss. We gotta get those
Again,
tomatoes before they get out.
this is the movie. Movie about killer tomatoes.
Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. tomatoes. You've never seen anything like it.
I honestly recommend this movie though, so I can't blame it too much. Like, but again, this is not a movie that I expect to have good reviews. I expect it to have like terrible, because again, it is so bad it's like actually funny, right? It is bad on like almost every level. It does not. It's not impressively visually. It does not have a like a good storyline, but it is funny, right? Because it's so absolutely stupid. But again, Star Wars the movies or the series that I have shown isn't that. Why? Why is it? God, is not that. Mm. So clearly it doesn't. It hasn't worked, right? Clearly it doesn't work at all. Like I would, I think Attack of the Killer Tomato, unironically, should have a better review than pretty much than the series that and such movies that I. There are many things that have that are problems. Is the next one on? I could, that clearly doesn't work. Terrible, terrible scenes, lightsabers that doesn't. But does it really need a reboot? Because again, like I know someone that doesn't agree with me. I do think it's yes. Someone someone I know said that they think they should go to another era, like the old Republic, right? But the thing is, the reason why I think it needs a retcon is because again, everything will go back and be connected, and the changes that they have in the world building will either just they're inconsistent and they just and how it works in later should be the same as in the earlier. So the changes in the later series should also be in the earlier ones, or in the ones that ain't. And it would go just contradict, and maybe you could just ignore it. Just ignore it. Again, everything would be built up to this, to Acolyte, to the Lost Jedi, to the sequel trilogy, and like if you did the Dark Empire storyline, right? Let's just say they did. Well, somehow Palpatine returned. Like Palpatine can always return at this point. What stops him? What stops him? He's already returned once, couldn't do it again. And the world between worlds, well, means you can change anything. At any point, any director, any writer could just go back, turn the clock, and change the entire timeline. This is a really bad idea, right? They could what it does no like why didn't they just go back and kill Vitiate or kill the big bad when they were or like kill Palpatine when they were again they could do the Hitler thing. They could prevent all of it. World Between Worlds. They know about it now. They can do it. They can actually affect. Like maybe you could fix the World Between Worlds so that you didn't do it. But again, like the sequel trilogy destroys the entirety of the sequel and everything and it will all and everything needs to be built back to that. It needs to be consistent with the sequel trilogy, Acolyte, and everything else, which ruins most of Star Wars. So it does actually need to. And it also destroys like the Anakin chosen one again because like why is Anakin the chosen? Like what is Anakin like? And yes, I know there's some people that have gone like explanation for some of these, and you could do individually. It's not that big of a deal. The problem is when there's just so many problems. Like oh, that it builds up to it. It needs to be rebooted. And you might or may not agree with me. I do understand that people don't. Again, it all accumulates in the Force in the Acolyte and well the sequel trilogy. Everything before has to lead up to the sequel trilogy. Everything to Snoke, All the other ones. To lesbian space wizard. Now I will mention this, I don't trust Disney to actually do anything or to fix it. I expect them to burn even to go down even further. I do think Acolyte is probably the top of the hill, but we never know. Or maybe you could argue also Snow White will make it so that it turns, combined with Trump being the president. I know that might seem like a really stupid thing. Why would that affect like movies? But it will, because it will affect the companies. What needs to change? First of all, there are a few problems with like it doesn't feel like it's a galaxy far, far away. It doesn't feel alien like all the other Star Wars movies did. You didn't really see like screws or other like things. They at least they changed it a bit, so it changed it. So it needs to feel more distant and alien again. It needs to feel like it's a galaxy far, far away. That's in the entire every single Star Wars movie starts with it a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It needs to feel like it's the far, far away. The lore, it needs a lore master. It needs to be more consistent, and they actually need to follow the lore master. They did, but they follows. And I will mention it. Maybe you will talk about the comics. I will not talk about the comics because they are ignored anyway. Disney doesn't care about the comics. They have contradicted them several times. Like, heck, the Rebels contradicted it. Bad Batch. Bad Batch. Or was it Bad Batch that contradicted? At least Bad Batch contradicted it. Like, they, for no apparent reason. Like, they've contradicted it several times. Yes, sometimes they may or may not. Yes, so, but again, the world needs to be consistent. They need to follow the basic rules of how, like, things like hyperdrive and other things like that work. Yes, they might be able to find a way for them to still use hyperdrive as a weapon. That's not what I'm talking about. But, like, you can't just do the whole movie. It just doesn't, it doesn't work. You can't, like, maybe you could say it worked on the supremacy itself because of this and that, but it would not work unlike Star Destroyers. They cannot pull them out of hyperspace. Or you might be able to explain it. I've heard some, like, it doesn't actually contradict. Anyway, they very much need to respect the legacy and lore of Star Wars. They clearly haven't done so. They clearly haven't. Like like several of the directors like didn't know like like they have said several times like oh the white male or something like that. Like with that Star Wars is racist and like or sexist or some things like that when they're a literal like a black Jedi master with like Mace Windu and like several like a Grand Master or a Jedi that was a female Jedi who was a Grand Master with Satele Shan like shut the then there are also several Jedi Masters that have been female even in the movies. I'm pretty sure Yaddle was a fucking female. Was it? Anyway, there are other ones as well. Like there are several Jedi Masters that was female. Like and most of them are just aliens anyway. Like it's fucking stupid. Respect the lore and respect the legacy of Star Wars. That's the basic base that they need to do. And also the fans. They can't just keep going and like disrespecting and like saying, "Oh, they're racist and sexist if they don't like the movie." Shut the fuck up. They can't just like one of the major problems in the sequel trilogy is that they changed directors in the middle to Rian Johnson from J.J. Abrams, and that just and like J.J. Abrams had at least a vague idea of where he wanted to go. I know he didn't plan fully out, but like, and then like Ryan Johnson came in the middle, like, no, I want to do this, so I'm gonna change some set. I'm gonna kill Snoke, plus some other shit that just kind of ruins your movie or where it will go. So that you have no idea where, because I want to make a divisive movie. Yeah, that's a smart idea, Disney. Also, you can't just give Star Wars movie to people that have no idea about Star Wars and haven't done any successful Star Wars movie. At least, at the very least, you can't just give them mul like hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to make a shitty movie, and you can't just have anyone and everyone and anyone just make up everything that they want to for the movies and series. Like that would like with if you had a lore master that actually had some or someone over that can actually control the storyline and grander storyline like they did towards Marvel, where one guy can see like, oh yes, this is how we're gonna do it. This like I do not control every single movie, but this is what we're gonna build towards. This is how we're gonna do it. And you're also gonna have to need to like give movies and series the time they need. Also, don't just give movie or a series like to that people wrote what happened to Obi-Wan, and just give it to a completely other person that completely just rips this it makes it terrible. The the other one to like someone that apparently I don't even think had any large successful movies. Like it and it's happened several times. But so again, with the reboot, what do you keep? Well, there are a lot of most things you would not keep. I don't think you should keep like Rebels, because of World Between Worlds, and there are probably other ones as well. I think most of Clone Wars you could keep just like Disney did. There might be some episodes that you would need to take away, but I'm not gonna go through that. I'm not gonna go through all of. I don't think even all of the episodes are canon, but anyway, I don't think all of them should be. But I digress. Rogue One, I think, is good enough, and I do good enough as a story, and it fits, and I don't think so that, and it's self-contained enough. I think that it's liked enough that I think it should be kept. Maybe you disagree that Rogue One was terrible. It shouldn't. It should. They should also decanonize that. I don't think so personally. Obviously, the OG trilogy and prequels should be kept, and maybe Mando. First are mostly self-sustained, and it doesn't and it's good. At least the first season. I don't know if all of it would be like kept, and again, I maybe. And also, I haven't watched all of Rebels. Maybe you could have the start of it canon, but not the rest. I know that for most of there are series that I have not watched. I will say that. So maybe there are some other series that should maybe be kept, but I think just not. I think most of it is just not worth keeping. So yeah. Again, I already mentioned this, but what does it need to keep? It needs to have it needs kind of well, it needs the trust of the fans again. As it has lost that. It's very clear if you look at just people that watched it. Skeleton Crew got pretty good reviews, but it got like it didn't get much. It didn't get much actual viewership. It had like 80%, 80, 90, 80% like on the popcorn meter, right on Rotten Tomatoes. But no one watched it because again, they've lost all the trust from the fans. And there were some parts in the trailer that just didn't feel quite Star Wars. But anyway, it needs quality directors and writers, which like again, if some of the again, like somehow Palpatine returned. That is not good writing. I do kind of understand to some degree why that happened, but yeah, again, and quality directors that understand and respect Star Wars. If you don't have a like director that respects Star Wars, you're going to end up with like some maybe like slightly better because they would But as something like Acolyte or the sequel trilogy or or something else. Also, I haven't written it here, but don't have like activists for writers and directors. That's just a terrible idea. Have people that have actually either that can that can give out a script that is like, yes, this is quality, and have them work with someone that knows what they're doing, right? Like actual, again, quality of writers and directors. That is just basic needs, and it's clear they haven't done it by the terrible like of the series and the bad movies and series they have, and consistently bad, right? It's okay if it's like one movie or series that is bad, right, or mid, but like it's consistently bad, that which is the problems. Also, more animated series again, and not don't doesn't need like hundreds of millions of dollars. So how would to start? First, it needs to, again, it needs to get back the trust of fans. So don't disrespect. No, so start with. It should probably start. Don't start with anything like super big project like a new sequel or a new trilogy or some super huge project. I think they were probably just gonna much more. Of you're gonna lose more money than from doing that immediately than you would otherwise, because again, fans don't trust you. So stories are mostly self-contained story, like something like Rogue One was a mostly self-contained story that respects the world building and the basic storytelling, because that's clearly they didn't do that with Acolyte. And don't make it so that it costs like make it a smaller project. Don't make it like these super high budget, high risk series and movies. Make it a smaller one. Probably make animated the like anime that does great. Have and also which is done better in my opinion, the Tales of the Jedi and Tales of the Empire has done much better than pretty much all the live action series at this point, or most of them anyway, not of the Disney era. And don't attack and disres and don't attack and disrespect the fans ever at any point. You can talk back like trust us or ignoring fans. You can do that. Don't completely ignore them, but you should but don't attack or disrespect them, which has happened, like calling them racist or sexist. That will just piss off the fans and will make them eventually. And oh, for the love of God, please don't say if you don't like it, don't watch it. That's so stupid and bad marketing. It's unbelievable you ever said that. Like, if you said 10 years ago that Disney was going to do that, I would not believe you. Straight up. Because why? That's so fucking stupid, right? Is obviously stupid. And they just keep doubling and tripling down. I don't think this will happen. I don't expect anyone to ever actually watch this video, but it's like again, this is like the basic thing, like basic storytelling. Like it should be the basic to make a series or movie. Like actually have a relatively good script before you start to make the movie, which doesn't seem like the case because they're terrible a lot of the time. Let's go back up again so that I have some higher volume. How I would do it. Stage one. I'd probably make a few self-contained movies until it depends how many. I don't know. Probably multiple, maybe one. Depends on how quickly you could get the fans' trust again. Uh, because again, I think that is like getting fans' trust and like okay, so that they would actually watch it. I do think like having an interesting Star Wars movie, or having like, oh, okay, that looks kind of cool. Maybe I want to watch that, like for a Star Wars movie. And again, I don't expect them to trust the viewers. So you need back the trust of the fans, so that they would actually go and watch it, right? at least uh, at least high enough respect that they just don't automatically just don't watch the series maybe and start following Star Wars again. It's something you need to have if you want to have it super successful again, which it isn't at this point. You have actually lost money with Star Wars. That's actually impressive. I don't think these movies should cost hundreds of millions of dollars. I think keep them much smaller, cost smaller. That again, you don't need to make it's more risk. It shouldn't be risky. Just make sure it's good quality and it fits into Star Wars. Again, it needs to fit into Star Wars. It's not just about quality, it's also about that it fits into the world and vibe of Star Wars. It doesn't mean that all of them needs to be have the same vibe as something like the original trilogy or Good Guys Win or something like that. You can have darker stories. George Lucas was going to do that, right? And it was also stated that if they actually did the Star Wars Underground or whatever the series was mentioned, it would not have Disney wouldn't have bought it. But again, shouldn't cost hundreds of millions of dollars like Acolyte and every other ones. Like keep them closer to something like Obi-Wan. And eventually, I this is personally, I think an Unknown Regions exploration series would kind of fit perfect. Why? First of all, it wouldn't be like other than it shouldn't not be like need to be super expensive because the cast wouldn't be super large. So you wouldn't need like these massive amount of actors you need to pay. You don't need to have like super well-known actors, and you could and it will also be interesting and make like maybe towards some of towards some of the ones that actually know stars like the already ones that know stars knows that the unknown. And you can also it's also a great opportunity to like to expand the Star Wars universe, to introduce some of the weirder aspect, to under explain why the unknown regions are in fact unknown, and a lot of the other ones, right? A lot of other things as well, in a natural way. Obviously, I don't think Disney would ever do that, and it should also probably end horribly. Though it does depend on where you put it. It doesn't need to be like you don't need to put that in. You could just have it so that they go throughout the exploration. It ends at some point after they've explored something big. I don't know how the story would actually go, but again, there are a lot of weird aspects in Star Wars, like hyperspace madness, the other dimensions in hyperspace. I think actually time traveling through hyperspace makes is better than so something like closer to something like Warhammer with the warp that you some occasionally time travel through is better in Star Wars than something with through hyperspace though is better than and makes more sense than something like the World Between Worlds. And but I digress. I don't think this should necessarily be in Star Wars though. With the time traveling, yes, I know that in the comics they did that, and the Bedlam Spirits did that. If you don't know what the Bedlam Spirits are, basically think of them as super like ghosts, but or like force entities, but super strong. When they don't really use the force, it's force too. But I digress. And this, after you've gotten some of the fans' trust again, at least trust enough so that they might actually dare to watch a Star Wars movie or Star Wars, I think you should start a new sequel trilogy. This sequel trilogy, I don't. If the next is stage two, right? Stage two, yes. So let's look at what I actually wrote. So I think that personally, I think the sequel trilogy should be about 50, maybe 60, maybe even further after the original trilogy. This is the why if it gives enough space to give a lot of things to happen. This to end and it would make I don't think it would make sense for like pretty much anyone to beat like a prime Luke outside of maybe something like Abeloth, but I don't think like if something like that happened, I do not think Luke should die. Like because it's so huge, I think the universe is just screwed without Luke, right? It gives enough space for things to have thoroughly gone and like for the Empire to have mostly lost. I think the galaxy at this point should be the New Republic should own most of the galaxy and maybe and some remnants on the mostly outer and unknown regions. Obviously, if in the unknown regions it wouldn't be that well known because again the unknown regions are difficult to travel through. And it should probably end with Luke dying. Not in a 1v1 like oh Luke dies or something like or something like how he dies in the original trilogy. I actually think he should die heroically in a fight, fighting like maybe like big bad dark side user, fighting like Luke with, and they have help from like his subordinates or other lesser dark side users. I don't. I think personally, I think the Sith. It shouldn't. The dark side order should not be Sith. It should be something different. You can base it off of something like the Rule of One, create, but I think the episode 6 when Darth Sidious dies should be the end of the Sith, just like how the original trilogy and all that, or with and no, Yoda was kind of the death of the Jedi, right? The old Jedi had died out. Now it's Luke's turn to make a new, fixed, and improved Jedi Order, and at this point he should have done it, right? He should have made this new order, and the galaxy should have been mostly in order, right? And it should end with Luke dying, clearly not not in his prime anymore. He should like older, like it maybe like something comment like, oh, if I was only like a decade or two or younger, I wouldn't have died like this. Like clearly showing that but still being super powerful, or still powerful, and in a legend, a living legend. And it should be a darker ending to the trilogy to start a new era. The era should like that era should be a new era. It should be the end, like the dark side has not stopped even though the Sith is gone. And also it would better have like solved the prophecy of the chosen one was correct. Anakin was the chosen one. I would also love if they kept like the Anakin with special thing where he can actually interact with the real world afterwards, like to further proof that he is in fact, yes, he is the chosen one and not Luke. But Luke should still be like basically the strongest Jedi alive ever. Or the strongest Jedi. And I would also love it if this like anyway, I'm probably gonna go. So that is like essentially when Luke dies, it should be like the start of a new era of conflict. So like this should be like closer to something like the Sith when the Sith first arrived in the Old Republic, right? After 300 years, we prepared, we grew stronger, right? When they started the war or something like that, and the Jedi should be put back. New and obviously as this trilogy is mostly set up for this new age of conflict, I do think that the dark side order should be like slowly built up, like throughout this trilogy, ending with them killing Luke, showcasing that this new bad guy is strong, but also he's not quite at Luke's level. Like he's strong, but he's not quite at not quite Luke level, right? So he's clearly weaker. But again, should be different. Should not be Sith, in my opinion. At the end, should death of the a Sith, Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker should have killed off. That should have been the end of the Sith. Maybe you can have something like a Sith ghost come, like Naga Sadao or something like that, come back, and later like an ancient Sith ghost can come back and maybe to some degree resurrect. But I don't think it should be like purely the same At least the death of like the Sith on how they were after the Great Hyperspace War, essentially. Let's go to stage two. Stage two. This should be basically expanding the new. I don't think it should be between when also the stage one before they do the new trilogy. I think they should prepare for to make a new trilogy throughout, like plan out, write some like many scripts. Probably also look at look at George's original script, like probably utilize that. I do think it should be different again, but stage two, I think again it should probably be set. It should be exploring like these unknown time periods more so and set up for it to expand the world. This is probably not the only series. I think like the should at least be like 5 or 10 years after the new before you start like a new trilogy and with a trilogy with something like a major main trilogy or whatever you want to call it. Here are some of my ideas for it. A Luke series. And it doesn't mean that all of them can be it could that there shouldn't be movies, but I just don't think they should be like major trilogies or that continues like on the Star Wars timeline. So this is basically the timeline at this point stops at the end of the trilogy. You could probably have some comics that goes a little further, but it shouldn't go into a my headset turned off. I will not be editing this, by the way. That's why there's just a silence there. I think here's my ideas anyway. So Luke series, it should be set between the original and the new trilogy. Could be animated, maybe probably animated. I don't know. So anyway, this I feel this should series should probably be with like Luke exploring and setting and eventually leading to Luke creating a new Jedi Order. But I don't think it should start with like Luke creating like starting to like take apprentices and so stuff like that. I think like it should start with Luke, reading like older texts, going, and obviously it's still wartime, so it's like I like it's not, I could maybe have an apprentice or two, but I shouldn't create focus on creating an order because again I need to be out and do it at least at the start. Also fixing some of the faults of the older Jedi, like going a bit that they have gone a bit too far into like the light side and like being kind of that the Jedi kind of turned extremists. Well, not bad. They have turned more extreme, like have further and further pushed away from the Sith. So like they have like so far anyway. So they're a bit more balanced, have fix some of the faults like like Anakin at the start was being too old. That's like and like or like no relationship with your family except some right because they have stuff like that. And also so that they something like Anakin would not have happened in Luke's order because again when Anakin went and asked Yoda for like advice and something like that, I think like in this time Luke should have been able to help Anakin. And heck, I don't think it should probably go to that level. Maybe some do in the afterwards in the new conflict era do go over to the dark side because of they have some good points, and hey, these have some cool and strong powers, right? Uh, and also it should probably allude to things like that the Sith having actually a reason outside of ideologies and power to dislike the Jedi. And I don't mean individually, like individual Sith having reasons to dislike the Jedi. I mean like the Order itself. Again, alluding to the hyperspace war, because I think that is such a big and cool idea, like with with the Jedi massacring the Sith and all that, and also a live action Clone Wars series with Hayden Christian, like with Anakin and Obi-Wan. That would be sick. Hayden and the other. Sometimes I just miss words. I just lose Evan McGregor, right? Evan McGregor. Fuck. Why doesn't it show the window? Uh, you're gonna see that. Anyway, and probably end with a sequel trilogy, but it doesn't need to be. There should probably be a movie or two in between and I'm going to the Rule of Two series. What I mean with that is essentially it should be preferably live action, but it could probably be animated as well. And I do think experimental, like single movies, should probably be there as well. But the Rule of Two series, it should focus on the Sith and how they operated during the Rule of Two, how they gained power. Probably also going to what was the name? Darth Graham, the one that destroyed a lot of Sith like text and stuff like that that explains away why the Sith doesn't like why the modern Sith and Rule of Two doesn't have, while powerful, does not have like all of these older techniques, why they don't have this and that they had in the like the old Sith had. And also that it should teach people that the Sith aren't just evil space wizards. They actually have an ideology, like a religion, somewhat, and more. It and it would be kind of cool. Like there wouldn't be a lot of in this story. Would probably not be a lot of like lightsaber combat. There would probably be some again training and stuff like that. I would probably want it to be have it a little after maybe like 100 or 200 years after like this Sith they destroyed like all these Sith maybe a generation two or three after this that they destroyed all of this the Sith holocrons and such. That would be a good time to put it. It could also be before, but then again you couldn't. It would be better in my opinion. Also going around going to Sith temples and other things like that, probably going to unknown regions, getting a better status within the Republic, and more, right? A lot of things you could go into like a Rule of Two series. Again, it would also be. And it should not be like the Acolyte where they fight like a tons of Jedi when they're blatantly being like a dark side user. That should not happen at any point. Maybe like the apprentice goes out and kills a few people with a lightsaber and dark side user like, hey, we're strong, like let out like molded in one of the comics, and he should be harshly punished. Like, you dumb motherfucker, right? You doing this ruins our like a thousand like hundreds of years or like centuries of like hiding from the Jedi only to like for this dumb shit. contain yourself. And then again, back sequel trilogy should probably be like the end of the the dark side user, the main dark side user of before. It should be like a new main character, yada yada. Maybe like the same from the from the one before. And but it should not be the end of the order. This order should basically be the new dark side order that operates after. There could be multiple, in fact. That would be more interest. That would also be very interesting for like time period, this new time period after Luke, where yes, while there is one Jedi Order, there is multiple other like Force orders. Like there is perhaps a gray Jedi Order. There's like several like dark side orders, all and the different ones fight against each other. There are also like the imperial remnants from the empire still after like there has been decades. How are they still left, right? Anyway, in the outer regions, that hey, these are not all bad, and that the new republic actually trade with these imperial remnants. Also, I think that the New Republic, while it should have problems, it should not be as bad in terms of the outer and mid rims that the Republic was, where they had to fend for themselves. And should also more the sequel trilogy should also put more definition on this new era. It should solidify what this new era should be. Stage 3. Going in the past, again, I do think that you should probably keep going with series in the Empire era. Probably make something like a Darth Vader movie, which would be epic. Games that where like again, I do think they should have a little more like everyone knows what a Jedi is. We know what the rebels are. We know the Republic. We like that is the main focus on most of the shit, but like we should have occasionally where they focus on the dark side or something where that isn't the Jedi or the Sith, something like the Mandalorians, and occasionally mixed in between. So like you have this more fine mix, so that a little bit of everything, a little bit for everyone. But again, I do think the past is important enough. I'm just gonna put what I think. I think you should probably have like a type of setup series. Also, yeah, with the sequel trilogy, I think the main Sith, the main bad or not Sith, but the main Darksider should be getting stronger, so that maybe it could even mirror something like or mirror Luke or die in a similar way. Like they were similar to Luke in a way, but like dark side, right? That would be interesting for me. Could be pretty cool. Also, don't have them lame, have them cool. They should be cool. That is obvious. Cool design, not lame and stupid. I think that it should probably have other unless you set up the Old Republic in this era, which would probably be part of the best with the Rule of Two series, perhaps with the Luke series. I think they should probably go with something like Old Republic. They might change the order somewhat, but like perhaps the Dawn of the Jedi movie. So basically, this movie would be how the Jedi were created, how the now known as Jedi was created, or how that was created, how it operated, and that it did do some weird focus and stuff like that, right? Then it should have a soft sequel. It should not be like it should technically be a sequel in this, but it shouldn't be the anyway. And then the Dawn of the Sith. Dawn of the Sith should be basically how the Jedi or this balanced order is split into two, into like a dark side, one that focuses on the dark side of it. It got a civil war, and the dark side getting pushed to the now Sith with something like Coruscant or other Sith species planet that turned into how the Sith first got created and integrated. Also, this would also include introduce something like the Sith as a species and not just as an order, and that they have culture much older than this as well. Again, this could also introduce the Rakata. And then in a third movie that, again, kind of in the same vague shape that it is kind of a sequel to this storyline, but that should end with either a series or a movie. It doesn't really matter for for all these three. With the Great Hyperspace War. This should probably be a series and maybe animated because it would be darker. Also, the no, the with the unknown region, but I'm gonna go back to stage one with the unknown regions exploration series. It should probably be animated because I think they would have been made. I think the weirder aspects could be um, better showcased with an animated series rather than a live action series, as it, like some monsters looks a bit janky with CGI, and it could be a, but maybe that's a positive. But hey, and it would probably make it cheaper as well. Uh, hyperspace, great hyperspace. I think the Great Hyperspace War is important enough. Again, legends and old legends with the Dawn of the Jedi should be the Jedi, as the legends refer to it, the Jedi. It should probably have a different name in this as well, but it doesn't have to be the Jedi. You could probably also just keep Jedi as it's good enough. Anyway, uh, the Dawn of the Sith should again focus on the order, not the species, but you could introduce the species into this, but essentially it should be how the Sith got more or less created. It's not the start of like the dark side or whatever, or how to utilize or evil or wars, things like that. Again, you could just look at the Rakata or and other things in Legends that happened way before this. But it is the start of the Sith, and it's the start of the several millenniums of conflict between the Jedi and Sith. How this would want to, how you could change how they want to go. Perhaps you could into evolve the Rakata as they did in Legends with this, and the Great Hyperspace War should probably be a series because I think like the movie should be a little lighter because I think it's more likely that, but it could be a movie as well. It should be darker. Again, the Great Hyperspace War is not a very is quite dark. If you don't know what the Great Hyperspace War, it's a very old war. It's essentially the Sith versus the Jedi slash the Republic. I'm pretty sure I remember it correctly, but which ends with the Jedi basically massacring the Sith. They didn't. It wasn't just the Jedi, but it was also vitiate. But I digress. That well, did a lot of. It's very important. It's quite important in lore. And also this is a probably like you could probably just make a Dawn of the Sith or Dawn of the Jedi, Dawn of the Sith, and the Great Hyperspace War, and then you had another set up another era. Uh, you could probably set up this Dawn of the Jedi with the Luke series, Dawn of the Sith with the Rule of Two. Again, not blatantly stated, but like some more vague sentence like, oh, the Jedi used to be more balanced. They didn't used to be this mega light side users. Again, being balanced doesn't mean they would be Sith. It was anyway. And the Great Hyperspace War is very important. It's one of the it's one of the reasons why the Sith really dislike the Jedi trauma. And the Sith, and also it should be clear through the Old Republic stage that the Sith are kind of why the Rule of Two was created, or at least like they understand why they created that, because it should have like any Sith series or any series with that has a lot of these dark side users should probably have a lot of backstabbing, should have probably have a fair amount of infighting. I think they should probably have a movie or sequel series, probably series that focus on like the Cold War, or at least or some where the Sith return, or like the Old Republic, and like a Sith. This is not my own idea, but I really like this idea. Sith Academy, like in the Old Republic type of academy where there are multiple ones. This is a very great way to showcase like Sith. Other than like the Rule of Two, which would be different, it would while yes they would be rough like in training with the Rule of Two era as well. They wouldn't have quite the amount of backstabbing and well infighting that they have in Sith Academy, and you can also have like showcase culture in like the Sith, more Old Republic Sith culture, as it did change. The culture with the Sith did change quite a bit in the older one, as like they had, I don't remember what it was called, but the Kada or whatever, Kagash, that's what where two Sith essentially higher, like Sith Lords types of Sith, not like any Sith, stronger type of Sith, where it's essentially war between two Sith and no outside help, but they anything that they own, like their armies and all things like that, could be utilized, and where the winner takes everything. They could do whatever they fight to the death with rules, right? This is it's also a very interesting time. There's a lot of things you can show, and it's also very cool. So it could be very cool and very and a little more adult than like children's media. But again, they have grown. Star Wars has grown up. A lot of fans are in fact adults. I think at this point probably more like adults and teens that are fans of Star Wars. Probably more adults than kids, because Star Wars has done shit with Disney. After this, like I think if you can manage to create these series, you're probably at a solid enough or successful enough, even probably this as well, where where you've created two sequels. You're probably successful enough. Star Wars is probably successful enough as to where like it's solid. Star Wars is probably solid by stage two if you can manage if the sequel thriller to see new sequel trilogy is a success. This stage two is probably stable, but this would probably be like where you know if like stage two is probably where you know for sure. Probably by the end of it as well, and this is your more than solid. At this point, you have kind of opened up the entire like from like 30,000 years of history to like the made to like, and again, not talking about like casual to I'm talking about casual fans which wouldn't have read comics, right? So they wouldn't have known about this. This would be more, and I think this is cool enough. It is important enough for the history as to where it's valid, and they have good reason to actually showcase this. If you want to go further with Star Wars, if you want to expand this would give like game developers like like at this point you would have like a very good basic layout for for pretty much the entirety of the line. I know there are much things that happens much earlier than this, but I think things that happened before the Jedi, before the Jedi and Sith were created, other than a few things like the Rakata, like I'm talking about like Celestials should probably be kept to mystery and legends. Again, the comics would go more in depth with things, but I don't think like I think the casuals should probably have a basic understanding of the history of like the Jedi and Sith and understanding of who the Sith and what the Jedi are, and that they are in all Jedi are just super good people and all Sith are like evil space wizards. That's all. This, for my opinion, would make it so that Star Wars has a deeper and that the casual fans a slightly better understanding of everything than just of anything. And it's also these things that happen in the Old Republic and like Sith. This is something the fans have been wanted for a while. Like the Old Republic is a very beloved time period of Star Wars, and I think like having a series or movie, you need in casual. I don't think casuals would know this as much. People that have only really watched like the movies and such, and maybe they haven't heard some part of it, some major characters, maybe someone like Revan. If you are in somewhat Star Wars circles, maybe you've heard some of it, but I don't think you would know much, if anything, about the Old Republic because there hasn't been any movies about it. There's been games with set in the Old Republic era. The Old Republic era, the old this time period, which I would say would be that technically the when the Dawn of the Jedi and Dawn of the Sith and before is another time period. The Old Republic era kind of starts with the after the Great Hyperspace War ends. You could call it like before the Great Hyperspace War as the Ancient Era, but this is where that era is basically where you set up the Sith and the Jedi. I would probably, I don't know if this would be in stage 3 or stage 2, probably stage 2, a Bane movie, Darth Bane. That would be really cool. That would be also, it wouldn't invalidate Rule of Two because again, they discover a lot during the Rule of Two, and there's a lot of things that happens during it, so I don't think it invalidates, but it also kind of sets up how maybe stage 3. Maybe stage 3 would be a good segue. And that would be like a great segue to like the Old Republic era, as it is kind of the time period between. It's not completely, as things have more changed during like the thousands of years different it is from like over like the 2-3 thousand years of war that the Old Republic era the old and ancient the Old Republic era spans. It is about 2,000 years, give or take. Maybe you could split it into two, where like the Bane era and like the Ancient era, maybe you could split it into two. But anyway, but yeah, this is the end of the video. This again, I don't expect anyone to really watch this, and I don't think, especially not something like Disney, and I don't expect Disney to really do any of this. I think if they would do anything with it would be like the this page probably, hopefully, because this is so basic. Other than maybe like the cost of series and movies, because I don't expect them to decrease. I expect them to double, triple, and quadruple down, which showcases because that's basically the reason why they're in this hole again. It's not just Disney though. It's not just Star Wars. It's a lot of things. You get Marvel, and basically all things that Disney touches, and most of modern Hollywood movies. But it looks like it's have started to change. I think the top is with Disney is probably Snow White. I don't think they're gonna go deeper than that. I don't think they're gonna make something like something worse. But anyway, that's the end. Bye. No editing. That's why there's a gap.